He is Jim Owczarski, Milwaukee Bucks beat reporter for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. My name is JR Radcliffe. This is not a full-fledged Point Forward podcast, but we are putting it on the podcast feed from now on. We're gonna do these little side chats, the Point Forward 5, we like to call it, because once upon a time we had the idea in our heads that we could do this in 5 minutes, like idiots. We thought, we'll do a 5-minute update. Yeah, right. Okay, times that by 3, and you have a starting point to this conversation. The Milwaukee Bucks, they open up the season October 23rd in Philadelphia. That is Wednesday. They will be back home on Friday to host the Chicago Bulls at Pfizer Forum. The NBA season is upon us, and man, I do not feel the buzz. I think that was probably the case last year. The juice is probably not there. And some of it is because, once again, the Milwaukee Bucks are dealing with, unfortunately, kind of a familiar refrain here. Khris Middleton, reportedly, we don't know as we record this precisely what his timetable would be, but isn't going to be playing in this game. Now, the Sixers will be missing some stars, too. We'll talk about that. But this has come up over and over again. I know injuries are a tough thing to discuss. We never really know the severity, but they have wanted us to believe, the Milwaukee Bucks, John Horst, Doc Rivers, have wanted us to believe that Khris Middleton would be roughly ready for the start of the season. Maybe there's a minutes restriction. They told us this in past years. They keep lying to us, Jim. I don't know if lying is the right word here, but there is a lot of, they always build it up to think Khris Middleton's going to be fine, and then Khris Middleton's not fine. Just top of mind. What are you thinking of this scenario, this situation? Did you see it coming to some degree? Like, where are you at with this?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we saw it coming just because with Khris, in terms of coming back from injuries, it's always a lengthy process. And for whatever reason that is. And the injuries have all been different over the years. Now, what I will say, though, is I feel like the medical staff generally gets it right. Because if you think about it, when Khris finally is on the court, a few years ago, he comes back, they rip off 16 wins in a row, right?
And the playoffs last year, my goodness.
Last year, right? And so he comes back from the Durant injury, and he looks good, right? So I think this is kind of where a lack of transparency hurts the team and player at times. Like, I get it. This is not the NFL. The injury reporting rules are different, particularly in off seasons. But when it's sort of this like nebulous thing, I think it just sort of, they take a lot of slings and arrows they don't need to take. I think if they were to just say Khris is recovering from 2 ankle surgeries, the plan is for him to be ramped up for the regular season. Progress will be updated the week before. Like, if you think about that, JR, like that simple phrasing handles a lot of this. That's just not how they operate. Sometimes they do medical updates. Sometimes they don't. I don't really know the rhyme or reason to that. But I think from this perspective, JR, it would probably benefit everyone if they did that. But, Khris just hasn't been cleared for 5-on-5, and that's not a coaching thing. That's a medical staff and probably a player thing to see how he's feeling and where he's at with protecting himself. And, I don't think he'd be doing individual drills, 3-on-3s, 1-on-1s if his ankles weren't able to do that, JR.
Yeah. Right.
But there is different between having, I don't know, what's 10 times 20 feet on the court. I mean, that's how this guy got hurt in the first place, by landing on feet. So, whatever that takes. So, I think Khris will be back. This is not a December rollout. This is not a Thanksgiving rollout, in my opinion, JR. I think it's
so far.
Is he ready? Is he ready by the start of November? And we'll find out.
I would imagine he'll be ready shortly into November at the worst. But, I thought that a couple years ago, and then and there were extenuating circumstances. There always are. Things compiled. He had some personal stuff going on, and his death in his family, and that sort of, made it difficult. But again, like, you're right, when he came back, he was good. And as much as, this is frustrating to Bucks fans, Milwaukee isn't playing for the regular season, or so they think. I mean, it's not a done deal that they're just they're just going to be handed a playoff spot like we've thought in past years. So that's, I guess, a small concern. Do you, they just need like an injury report, like the NFL, right? Where they tell us, okay, he did not practice this week, or limited. And, in the NFL, no one is saying, oh, he's not going to play. But it's like, well, if he wasn't practicing on Thursday, he's not going to play on Sunday, so that would certainly benefit them. You've said before, you've talked about the Khris Middleton part of the equation, how big of a deal he is, as much as this is seen as the Giannis Dame experience. They are, nobody, it's no secret they're at their best with Khris, but that he is an essential part of this. Is there a way this can work without him? Is there a way that they can, I don't even mean for the playoffs, because I'm not thinking of Khris as a long-term absence at this point, but in the event that he's unavailable for wide swaths of this season, is there a way that this team can still click, even if Khris Middleton isn't in that equation, or is that a non-starter?
No, I think in the regular season, JR, they can be fine.
Okay.
I think they'll feel it against Boston. They'll feel it against Oklahoma City, right? The top tier, like there's a reason those three guys make $130-40 million combined, thereabouts. So against the top tier, I think, yeah, you'll be like, wow, we could use that 16 to 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists, right? But the Dame Giannis growth that we expect to see, I think can mitigate that most other nights. Doc Rivers says, he said the other day, JR, that they still kind of run into each other a little bit right now with ball handling duties and sort of crowding space. He's like, but compared to when I got here last year, it is almost a night and day difference. Giannis is off the ball a little more. They say he's accepting of this to give Dame a little more space to operate a little, and Khris when he gets to that point. So I think the Dame Giannis thing together with Brooke, Gary Trent Jr., this is where Gary is going to me be a big signing for the Bucks, JR, because when the three of them are together, he's going to shoot threes. If Khris isn't there, Gary Trent has averaged 20 points a game in his NBA career. I think he's roughly around 16 or so in his entire career. He can get them a bucket. Not maybe like Khris, but he's a guy. They haven't had that, JR, right? Like when Khris has been hurt, it was Drew Holiday trying to take on this extra load, and that didn't always work. Last year it was Malik Beasley. Didn't always work. Gary's a little more polished of a scorer, so I think there's a little more of a buffer there to help. But I do think the Dame Giannis connection this year, JR, should mitigate regular season games if Khris has got to sit out.
Yeah, I think that I completely agree with you. The Dame Giannis thing will be on display here in these first few games of the season. I think that's one of the things everybody's looking for, and I'd be curious to know what you're looking for. 4 of these first 5 games are on the road. They only have one home game in October, and that's the one coming up on Friday against the Bulls. This game against Philadelphia is kind of an interesting one because now we know Yoel. There's a Yoel on the Brewers. Joel in the NBA.
That's a hard J.
Things mix up in your brain when you follow all these sports, but Joel Embiid is not going to be in uniform that night. Paul George is not going to be in uniform. The 76ers' 2 big stars are not going to be there. This is a team that's going to be battling with the Bucks in the top tier of the Eastern Conference. So it's kind of an interesting development to have 3 of the stars on these teams not available for game 1. If we assume Khris won't be there either. So what is it that you're looking for? I don't think Bucks fans are really going to lock in for a couple months here. If I'm going to be completely honest, Packers season is going to have to be over before people are in on the Bucks. But at least in this first couple of weeks, what really are you watching as the season gets going?
So look, I want to see them do the thing early this year, JR, that they didn't do early last year under Adrian Griffin, which now in retrospect you look back and saw that was a symptom of a broader, deepening problem that led to Adrian Griffin's dismissal, and that is beat the crap out of the crappy teams.
Let's go. Yes.
So look, remember, like the Bucks were mad last year when I believe it was Atlanta and Toronto smashed them in early losses when they were squeaking by the Bulls and some of these other wins. So yeah, they were 18 games over 500 with Griffin. But if we remember, like Dame and Giannis were playing like 38 minutes to do this. No Joel Embiid, no Paul George. It's just Tyrese Maxey and 11 other guys they just signed 3 weeks ago.
Win by 15.
They should go in there and smash the 76ers, in my opinion. The Bulls suck. Beat the Bulls.
Win by 25.
Brooklyn sucks. beat the Nets, even on the front end of a back-to-back, and you might be looking ahead to Boston. Okay, let's see what the Celtics are. It's a home game, the champs. Khris isn't playing, whatever. And then they've got a Memphis team on the road in Memphis that is rebounding from a bad year on their own. 3-2 start. Okay, whatever. But like, if you're gonna, but they should really be 3-0 heading into that Boston game because those teams are bad.
Yeah.
And I don't care that the Bucks offense isn't all the way installed yet because Khris isn't there or whatever. That's what I'm looking to see are some motivated guys who had a whole camp together. They're healthy right now to start the year. And those are the teams that when you're going to win 50 to 56 games, you win those games and you win them fairly easily. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for on an individual level. Again, they've talked about Giannis being off the ball. He's got to buy into that, JR. He's got to be able and willing to sprint up the court when Dame is bringing the ball up and create havoc in a different kind of way. And that's, I think, going to be really important in this season. As Dame said, it'll allow Giannis to be dominant in different ways and with less effort. He's not going to have to continually take as many hits as he has over all these years, running through guys. If he's cutting and running and just getting easy layups or dunks, that could unlock a lot of different things. So those, I would say, on a broad level and on an individual level is what I'm looking for in the first week and a half.
We kind of talked about the national perspective on the Bucks, that they're not seen as one of the darlings of the East anymore. I went through kind of some national writers, what they were saying, put that together for jsonline.com. Most people think they're fourth, fifth in the East. Certainly not a team that's going to compete for the Eastern Conference title outright. They could sneak in. I think you would agree with me that it's really going to be about what happens in the postseason and not how the regular season goes. But if this team doesn't reach the Eastern Conference Finals, and it's not because of an injury, like it has been the last couple of years where they've been eliminated, how is it over? Not to go into the beginning of the season and think about the end already, but what's the fallout there? Is the window closed if something doesn't happen here, or if they just regress to the point that they are barely trying to avoid the play-in tournament over the course of the season? It could be just because people got hurt, but it could also be because this thing has run its course. I don't know. Am I being too philosophical on day one?
What's a PFP without JR dooming?
Let's go. The season is here, baby. Brewers are over. I need someplace to put this pessimism that I have, Jim.
Look, I wrote, to start, here on Tuesday, JR, should this team actually have championship expectations?
Yeah, love that. JSonline.com. You should read it.
That's an unearned thought. This team, as we look at it, has not competed for a title. They have not earned, to me, that moniker. Honestly, JR, if you really look through the East, only Boston. All these other teams you're looking at either Cleveland or Orlando making huge leaps.
New York.
You don't know. New York. Look, they were a Eastern Conference semifinalist, and guys are hurt, and they made a big trade on the eve of camp. The Bucks know how that works. That doesn't always click. So to me, JR, the East is Boston's the only team that has an expectation in my view. Now, to your point, the pundits, the odds makers have them as a middling team. They've earned that to a degree in the playoffs. What I will say is just 2 years ago, JR, when Mike Budenholzer's Bucks decided we're going to win the East, they literally said in camp, our goal is to win the East because we want home court. What did they do? They won 58 games, coasted in. They could have won 60. That was just 2 seasons ago. And last year, JR, for as good as Boston was, for all the tumult that the Bucks had, they were the 2 seed all year long until Giannis gets hurt, Dame gets hurt. They crumble down the stretch and don't that. So as a regular season team, JR, I don't know why they're sort of slated as this 5th type seed team. Like they win a lot of games. Now to your point of like down the line and what if they don't reach certain things, I think, and I'll get to this at some point, they actually have a lot of flexibility after this season. I think if this doesn't work, there will be an overhaul around Damon Giannis in some fashion. Is at the end of a window or just a changing of the drapes? I don't know. But I don't think it's over by any stretch after this year. However it ends, if it doesn't end in a deep run. So I think there's two things there. One, it's this team does win a lot of regular season games because they're just that good. To your point of down the line, I think a lot can go into it, but they're not without options financially, even though they don't have draft picks. But as we know, JR, draft picks don't win you titles. So I think there would be a reboot of some kind to answer your dooming vibe here.
Let's close this down with maybe an uptick in vibes, maybe not. Actually, probably not. There is this rumor out there about MarJon being on the block, which isn't a surprise. MarJon hasn't maybe quite materialized, and Doc Rivers didn't play him very often. So I think it would make sense if the team were looking for a trade partner, if that's even possible at this juncture, and that they might re-sign Thanasis, who is out for the year with an Achilles injury. I don't know if you have any wisdom as to like, would they do that? Would they sign him now, Thanasis, if they had that opportunity, whether or not it involves MarJon? I don't, that didn't quite compute for me, but do you have any thoughts on that?
So yeah, real quick, MarJon Beauchamp, JR, as we record this, there's 9 days to go before the team has to decide on his option for next year, which is roughly $4 million. I think they should pick that up. You kind of need contracts and things to trade down the line. So, I think that'll happen. Should they decide to move him, they can't add salary in a trade. So he makes like roughly $2.7 million. If they wanted a player back, it has to be that or lower, which is frankly another young player.
Yeah. Same boat.
Yeah. Now, to the other question of Thanasis, if they were to move MarJon for a future second, which means there's no money coming back, they could sign a minimum free agent because the league, there's some convoluted rules that allow, like the league reimburses the team. So even though Thanasis would make $2.8 million, the league actually reimburses a lot of that stuff. It's kind of convoluted. So they could technically sign him and not like lose money. They actually save a little bit of money. The question there would be, would he be able to play after tearing an Achilles in May? I mean, I know Thanasis is not in a boot, not on a wheelie scooter. I know that he's doing some stuff, but I don't know if I mean, it's only been a few months, JR. I don't know if he's on the Aaron Rodgers plan or what. So I guess it's a long way to couch. Yes. If it was there, I think a lot of things clearly have to happen and be cleared and boxes checked and all that stuff. Now to MarJon, though, I do think clearly he has not found a footing here in Milwaukee. And if it probably a fresh start wouldn't hurt, I think either party. He's not going to play here. He's not going to crack the rotation. So, is there something out there for him where the Bucks could get a second rounder? They don't have any going forward. So it's just a matter of, is there a roster spot? Is there cap space for just offloading a player for a pick? And that's the issue, JR. Right now, there isn't a lot of cap space or roster spots left in the league. So that's a whole other mess that I think is a little more complicated than just, we're interested in this thing. The facts of that are a little harder to kind of parse through.
I find that very illuminating. Thank you, Jim. He is Jim Owczarski, Bucks reporter for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. The Milwaukee Bucks and some version of the Philadelphia 76ers will meet on October 23rd to start the season. The Bulls at Pfizer Forum 2 days later. Thank you, Jim. We'll talk to you again soon.